Anybody hear that?
Hey everybody, Brent back with you. Got one card I want to show you today, and it's a rookie card of, in my opinion, and probably in most opinions, probably your opinion too, you just didn't know you had this opinion, one of the most influential content creators of our lifetime. This is a card from the 1978 Topps Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It is none other than Steven Spielberg. This is his rookie card. This is the first time he has been encapsulated in the medium of cardboard. This was his fourth movie. He had three movies that came out before Close Encounters. The movie came out in November of '77. This set came out in the spring of '78. It's an SGC5. It's a bit off center, as you can see, from left to right, but you just don't see these graded at all, hardly, which is kind of surprising when you think about this is the first card of this director. You'd think you'd see him more. Maybe it's because I'm an SGC guy and I wanted it in one of their slabs, so maybe it was a little harder to find and wait for, but I jumped on this when I saw it, and I've had this in the collection for a few months, finally getting around to making a video about Steven Spielberg. So in addition to having to show you this card, I wanted to have a conversation centered around him and how influential he has been to many of us for the 50 plus years that he's been making movies. There probably isn't another director that has influenced most of us in one way, shape, or form growing up, whether it be from the 70s, 80s, 90s into the 2000s. Everybody can argue about, what movie is his best, what movie is his most influential. You may not like some of the movies that a lot of other people like, but you can't deny a lot of the movies that have changed the way movies have been made, and just creating a nostalgia-based experience often because of this guy. And I wanted to present to you, in my very, very humble opinion, what I think are the five. Actually, I'm gonna change that. I was about to say there's five best movies. These are the five movies that mean the most to me. These are my five favorite Steven Spielberg movies. So what won't be on my list will be Schindler's List. Now, many could argue that that's his best movie of all time, and probably is from a movie creation, just the way whatever that movie, what it stood for, and just the amazingness of it. But that isn't one of my favorite movies of his. And you're going to see in this list, it's very, for the most part, nostalgia based. The thing about Steven Spielberg that I realized when I got this card and started thinking about it is that he's a director whose films have formed such an integral part of my life, but it formed such an integral part of my life before I even knew who he was. It's like some of the movies I'm going to name you, as a kid, you don't care who or even know who directed a movie. I mean, when you're young enough, you don't even know what a movie director is. At least back in the '70s, when there wasn't that awareness. You had such childlike wonder that you didn't care that there was a person named George Lucas that directed Star Wars. You just cared that there was a Star Wars, and there were these characters that you wanted to go out and buy the figures and the cards and just relive those scenes with your friends, on a Saturday evening across the street in the woods. I mean, that was what you did, right? It's like, yeah, let's talk about the guy who made this. You don't. As you get older, you appreciate the art, you appreciate the process, you appreciate all the things that go into it. That's a beautiful thing as well. But one thing that I love about Steven Spielberg is that he has such a gift of keeping that childlike wonder intact even as we get older, because we get in the way of ourselves. Not that appreciating art and beauty is getting in the way of anything, but sometimes we get so nuanced in the creation of things and the all of the behind the scene things and who did what and who starred in what, imdb.com, you can look at all that stuff. We just sometimes just need to just throw that all away and just be in awestruck, childlike wonder. And I think that's one of Steven Spielberg's greatest traits. So these are my 5 favorite, to me, Steven Spielberg movies of all time. Before I get into it, though, there is a quote that I found. And this quote, I do not know who said it, because the way I found it was from another person who wrote a blog about Steven Spielberg, and he didn't know where he saw the quote. So I don't feel obligated to search that at this point. But it perfectly encapsulates who I think Steven Spielberg is. The quote goes like this: "The mark of greatness is when everything before you is obsolete and everything after you bears your mark." I can't think of a better way to describe Steven Spielberg and his indelible contributions to the whole of cinema, honestly. So that's why I think this card is stinking awesome. If you can find yourself a copy, it doesn't have to be great as raw. Think about it. This is the rookie card of one of the greatest cinematic creators of all time. And yes, so without further ado, here are my 5 favorite Steven Spielberg movies. Coming in at number 5 is the most modern card movie on my list. That is Minority Report. This came out in 2002. It's based on the novel by Philip K. Dick of the same name. And essentially it just goes into, it's set in 2052, I believe, Washington, D.C. And at that time, they have found a way, I won't spoil it because if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. This is probably the one movie on this list that you might not have seen. They're able to predict crime. It stars Tom Cruise, and it's just this perfect taut sci-fi futuristic thriller. It's a bit dystopian at the same time. It's very futuristic. It has some Blade Runner-esque types of vibes to it, and it just also is, you know, has the bureaucracy and the corruption of government tied in with crime, and it's just really, like I said, very taut and well done. And I've seen it many times, and I will pound the table. It's one of the best sci-fi movies, I think, that's ever been made. So that's my number 5. Coming in at number 4 is none other than 1993's Jurassic Park. This is one of those movies that you kind of remember, where were you when you saw it for the first time? Such a huge event in cinema history when they were able to do what they did with Jurassic Park. Now, a lot of the heavy lifting and credit needs to go to, honestly, George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic. They were the ones that were able to create the amazing dinosaurs that we saw. But this was Steven Spielberg's baby. Obviously, it was after the Michael Crichton book that it was based on. But his vision and his ability to just keep you in that childlike wonder, but at the same time, you're just like, oh my gosh, these things are so huge and they look really real. For 1993, this was new, right? We just got off the heels of Cameron's Terminator 2 and the amazingness of the T-1000 and just the liquid metal and all of the amazing special effects that came with that. But this was next level. And this really just kind of opened up a whole new chapter for CGI type of movies. Now, fast forward to where I am now, and I'm kind of on the, I'm a little burned out with CGI. And I like that some movies are kind of going back to the basics and kind of like, you know, getting back to originality of not using as much CGI. It's amazing how in your life you kind of go through this, you know, journey. But at the time in 93 and throughout the rest of the 90s into the 2000s, the CGI was just mind-blowing, and it really started on this grand of a scale with Spielberg's Jurassic Park. Coming in at number 3 is from 1975, Jaws. Now, Spielberg, we just mentioned Jurassic Park. Jaws was kind of in 75 what Jurassic Park was in 93. Nobody was doing this. This is so real. Now, again, I was born in 72, so I did not see Jaws when I was 3 years old. My parents had their flaws, but they didn't take a 3-year-old to see Jaws in the theater. I did see it, though, in 1979 when it world premiered on ABC for television, because back then there was no VHS, or if there was VHS, it was, we weren't rich enough to have a VHS player yet. But it world premiered on ABC, and that's where I saw it for the first time as a 7-year-old, and it just scared the hell out of me. But I was just so amazed at how real it was. And watching it since then, you kind of, get more into the Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss characters. You get more kind of like into the nuances. But back as a 7-year-old, all I cared about was the big shark and don't go in the water. And everybody at that time and that age was scared to go swimming. I don't care who you were. You're lying if you didn't think twice before you walked into even a freaking river. It's like, there could be a shark in here. And then you'd have some a-hole friend that was going, don't. That's genre busting. That's genre creating type of cinema. And I think Jaws was one of the biggest movies to be able to do that. So that was number 3. Number 2, 1981's Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was such an indelible moment for me as a 9-year-old. This is where I started to love Egyptology. I started to love archaeology. I took classes, fast forward to after I graduated, I took archaeology classes in college. I've gone to woolly mammoth dig sites, and it probably all started from Indiana Jones. But it was just badass. It's like, wait, this guy's Han Solo, now is Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford's the coolest person on the planet. But the movie was so fun. It was so interesting, so fun, so exciting. Everybody got on their bike and wanted to be Indiana Jones riding around town. Everybody wanted to go buy a whip. Everybody wanted a leather coat. Everybody wanted that hat. And it was such an amazing movie that stands the test of time. And I think it's one of the greatest action adventure movies ever created. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Beautiful, beautiful film. Number 1 for me, and there could be no other choice, is the set that this card came from. 1977's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, this movie to me was the epitome of wonderment as a child. I did go see this in the theater. Actually, we saw this at the drive-in 1978. And just the knowledge that it's different from a Star Wars, right? Because that's in a galaxy far, far away, obviously. But this is in Muncie, Indiana. It's like these things are coming to see us, right? And they're in amazing ships. That kid that goes to the door and opens the door because they're calling him. It was the exact same age as me when that movie came out. So I identified as that kid, and I wanted that to happen. I wanted to open up the door and to see that bright glow of orange light and the alien ship beckoning me for whatever reason. It's like at that point, I didn't care that this meant something as I'm eating mashed potatoes. I wanted to be the kid that was going up in that spaceship, right? But then I also wanted to go see Devil's Tower. I did create Devil's Tower with my mashed potatoes, much to my mom's chagrin. That movie to me just moved me like probably no other movie ever in my life, and just created such, and still does. I just watched it 3 weeks ago, and it still moves me, between John Williams' score and just you saw in Richard Dreyfuss's character, that's the childlike wonderment of, now you could question his parenting and his, marriage that he just threw to the side so he could chase, these aliens. But, we're not going to talk about, those kind of decisions. We're just going to talk about the amazing movie that Spielberg made. And this card, besides being the first card of Spielberg, is just, that's him making this movie that means so much to me. So that makes this card, I'm so glad. I would be a little, not disappointed, but this card means more to me than if his rookie card came out with Jaws. By the way, there is no Jaws. The first Jaws cards were Jaws 2. So that's why this is the first card of Spielberg. But it means so much more to me because it's in this set for this movie, which is my number 1 Spielberg movie of all time. So if you've made it this far, I appreciate you listening to me rambling. I love to talk about pop culture, movies, sci-fi, and of course, I love to talk about cards. But you have a job. I need you to comment down below. What is your favorite or favorites, plural, Steven Spielberg movies and why? I would love to hear your thoughts. What movies do it for you, from anywhere from The Fabelmans, one of his most recent movies, all the way back to his first movie, Duel. You need to see Duel. If you haven't seen Duel, his very first movie, it is so simple, but so amazing in its simplicity. It's a great movie. Great movie. Go see Duel. But anyways, list down below 1, 2, 5, 10, I don't care, Steven Spielberg movies that you love and adore. And if you have the time, tell me why. But I appreciate you watching, and thank you so much for spending almost 16 minutes of your very precious time listening to me babble about movies and cards. All right, I appreciate you all. Have a good one.